Where there is big money, there will be people trying to get their cut, sometimes unscrupulously. The film industry is no exception. Perhaps the most infamous shady studio of recent memory is Franchise Pictures. Franchise Pictures was formed in 1998 by Elie Samaha, a nightclub owner, real estate entrepreneur, and producer, and Andrew Stevens, a Golden Globe nominated actor turned producer. Franchise would release their first film, A Murder of Crows, in July of the following year. The film was about a disbarred lawyer, played by Cuba Gooding Jr., who passes a dead man's book as his own and is accused of 5 murders, just as described in the book. Despite starring Gooding and Tom Berenger, reception of the film was poor, and it currently has a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Stormcatcher would be their next film, starring Dolph Lundgren. It was briefly released to theaters before getting put on video due to poor reception, not getting close to its $2 million budget. The Boondock Saints started off the new millennium for the studio. The movie starred Sean Patrick Flanery and Norman Reedus as twins who become criminals after killing members of the Russian mafia. The film's release was delayed after the Columbine High School massacre, and even then it was only released in 5 theaters where it only grossed $30,471 against a $6 million budget. However, when it was released on video, it made $50 million in sales. The next movie was Mercy, a crime thriller about a detective, played by Ellen Barkin, who has to hunt down a serial killer. The film would not make much of an impact at the box office. The religious drama The Third Miracle, starring Ed Harris and Anne Heche, was given a small release by Sony Pictures Classics, only grossing $736,592 at the box office. Franchise then made a co-production deal with Morgan Creek Productions and a distribution agreement with Warner Brothers Pictures. This new arrangement started off extremely well with the release of The Whole Nine Yards, which was about a hitman played by Bruce Willis who moves into a normal neighborhood and has to deal with his neighbor, played by Matthew Perry. The film was produced for $41 million and grossed $106 million. The Kevin Spacey-Danny DeVito dramedy The Big Kahuna then followed. Despite positive reviews in its well-received source, the play Hospitality Suite, it only grossed $3 million of its $7 million production cost. Their next film would fare even worse. It would be Battlefield Earth, based off of Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard's 1982 novel. The film starred devout Scientologist John Travolta. However, an overwhelmingly negative reception would see the film only gross $29.7 million of its cost of $75 million. However, this would become a point of contention that I'll talk about later on. Another direct-to-video Dolph Lundgren movie then came out in the form of Jill Rips. However, it would not receive very much attention from critics or audiences. The Art of War, a Wesley Snipes action film, then got its release, but only grossed $40.4 million on a $60 million budget. Get Carter, a remake of the 1971 Michael Caine film, starred Sylvester Stallone and was produced for $64 million, but only grossed $19 million. Franchise's final release of the year was Animal Factory, a prison drama starring Willem Dafoe, Edward Furlong, Danny Trejo, John Hurd, Mickey Rourke, Tom Arnold, Seymour Cassell, and Mark Boone Jr. that was directed by Steve Buscemi and based off of Eddie Bunker's novel. However, despite extremely positive critical reception, it was only in at most 3 theaters, causing it to only gross $43,805 at the box office. 2001 would not start off any better with the release of the mystery film The Pledge, directed by Sean Penn and starring Jack Nicholson, Aaron Eckhart, Helen Mirren, Robin Wright Penn, Vanessa Redgrave, Sam Shepard, and Benicio del Toro. It would receive major praise, with Penn receiving a Golden Palm nomination at the Cannes Film Festival. However, it would only gross $29.4 million on its $35 million budget. Franchise's following movie was 3,000 Miles to Graceland, which was about a group of thieves who planned to rob the Riviera Casino during a convention of Elvis Presley impersonators. However, after receiving negative reviews, the film only grossed $18 million worldwide at a production cost of $62 million. Cavemans Valentine, starring Samuel L. Jackson, was produced for $13.5 million. but would only gross $687,194. Things You Can Tell Just by Looking at Her premiered on Showtime in the United States, but did receive a minor theatrical release. The film did receive some praise and earned a Primetime Emmy nomination for Holly Hunter. Another Lundgren movie was released in the form of Agent Red. However, like other Lundgren films, it was received poorly. The franchise would have their biggest hit of the year with Driven, which would gross $54 million at the box office, but it was produced for $72 million. The movie was about a rookie driver battling the reigning series champion for the Kart World Series Championship and starred Sylvester Stallone, who also wrote it, Kip Pardue, Till Schweiger, and Burt Reynolds. Stallone originally intended the film to be about Formula One racing, but he later changed it to IndyCar racing in the form of kart. The Jennifer Lopez vehicle Angel Eyes was produced for $53 million, but grossed $29 million. Viva Lost Nowhere starred James Caan, Daniel Stern, and Patricia Richardson, and is about a motel owner dealing with a lounge singer and her manager. It was produced on a $10 million budget, but didn't come close to recouping this after getting a limited release. The crime drama Heist received praise from Roger Ebert for being a callback to older crime movies. Despite this, it only made $28.5 million at the box office after being produced for $39 million. The studio's final film of 2001 would be Auggie Rose, which premiered on Cinemax and then went to home media before getting a very limited release in California. The film would get limited attention. Green Dragon started off 2002 for the studio and followed the experiences of Vietnam refugees following the fall of Saigon. It starred Patrick Swayze and Forest Whitaker and received positive reviews. However, it only grossed $281,803. Zig Zag was about a man with terminal cancer helping his autistic protege. However, nobody was able to help this movie as it would only gross $2,418. Their next film would be Fear.com, a horror movie about people dying after being on a website. It was produced for $40 million but only grossed $18 million. If Dog Rabbit had a respectable cast that included Matthew Modine, John Hurt, and Bruce Dern, but it premiered on video nearly 4 years after production was complete to little fanfare. City by the Sea was about a cop played by Robert De Niro dealing with his drug addict son, played by James Franco. It would only make $29 million out of a $40 million budget. The Antonio Banderas Lucy Liu action film Ballistic X vs. Sever was made on $70 million, but only grossed $19.9 million. It currently has a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The Steven Seagal thriller Half Past Dead ended the year and only grossed $19 million on a $25 million budget. Seagal would return to start off 2003 with The Foreigner. It would be released straight to video after getting criticized for poor acting and Seagal not performing martial arts in it. Avenging Angelo starred Sylvester Stallone as a mob boss's bodyguard who must also guard his daughter after he dies. It would only gross $824,597 at the box office on a cost of $13 million before getting quickly released to home media. The In-Laws starred Michael Douglas and Albert Brooks and was a remake of the 1979 film of the same name. It would gross $28.8 million on a $40 million budget. The Rob Reiner film Alex and Emma starred Kate Hudson and Luke Wilson and was about an author played by Wilson who must finish a book to pay off debts to the Cuban Mafia and how he gets help from a stenographer played by Hudson. The film would not pay off as its budget was $30 million and it only made $15 million. The studio also produced a direct-to-video horror movie, Final Examination. It would get mixed reviews. In Spartan, Val Kilmer played a former special agent who has to rescue the daughter of the President of the United States, who was captured. Despite getting good reviews, the movie only made back $8 million of its $23 million budget. Franchise Pictures then decided to make a sequel to their only major hit in the form of The Whole 10 Yards. However, it would get negative reviews and gross $26 million with a $40 million budget. It was earlier said that Battlefield Earth and other films were massive flops. However, Franchise Pictures may have came out fine, as they paid much less than they claimed for the film, as a result reducing their risk. Entertainment AG agreed to pay for 47% of the production cost for several franchise films, getting European distribution rights in exchange. but they claimed they paid for 60 to 90% of the costs, and that franchise made claims of budget sizes that were much larger than the reality, a practice called padding. They would sue franchise, and the case was heard in Los Angeles in May and June of 2004. Entertainment would eventually win the case and was awarded $121.7 million, with Elie Samaha being liable for $77 million. The franchise would then release Out of Reach, another Siegel direct-to-video movie that featured him taking down a human trafficking syndicate who has his pen pal. Produced for $20 million, it got largely negative reviews, like the rest of Siegel's franchise films. As a result of money owed to entertainment, Franchise Pictures declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy on August 9th and closed down soon afterwards. However, Franchise Pictures still had other films that had to be released. The first of these were Funky Monkey, which was about a boy, a chimpanzee, and his caretakers. They take down an animal testing lab. It was produced for $30 million and died at the box office. Dolph Lundgren starred in another direct-to-video movie for the studio with Retrograde, not really leaving an impact with audiences. Siegel then started Into the Sun, which was actually released to theaters. However, it only made $175,563. A Sound of Thunder was based off of Ray Bradbury's short story. It would only gross $11 million on an $80 million budget. The medieval romantic drama Tristan and Isolde made $28 million at the box office. The final Franchise Pictures film would be the Wendell Baker story, which was produced in 2005 but not released until 2007. It starred Owen and Luke Wilson, with Eva Mendes, Eddie Griffin, Chris Christopherson, Harry Dean Stanton, Seymour Cassell, and Will Ferrell in supporting roles. And a fitting end for Franchise Pictures, the film was produced for $8 million but only grossed $153,169. During their history, Franchise Pictures only produced one film that was a financial success at the box office. Additionally, their only real legacy is their demise after padding their budgets.